She's behind.
Yeah.
Hello everyone, welcome to this meeting of the Windsor Forum on Thursday the 9th of November. My name is Councillor Alison Carpenter and I'll be chairing this meeting this evening. This meeting is being held in person and via Zoom and streamed live to the public on YouTube. I remind all attendees that participation in this meeting indicates consent to the audio and video being streamed live and acknowledgement that after the meeting it will continue to be available in the public domain. Firstly, it'd be useful if all panel members and officers could introduce themselves so that the public are aware of who is in the meeting and the role that they are undertaking. So as I say, I'm Councillor Alison Carpenter and I'll hand over to the Vice Chair. Thank you.
Hello, Vice Chair, Councillor Amy Teasey, Lead Member for Windsor and Ward Councillor for Clewer East.
Councillor Mark Wilson, Ward Councillor for East Newcastle.
Helen Price, Ward Councillor for Clewer and Dedworth East, and I'm substituting for Councillor Knowles.
Lawrence Ellis, Democratic Services and Clerk to the Windsor Forum.
Is there anyone online?
Stephen Hedges.
I think Councillor De Costa's. Is there any officers online or any councillors? I think Councillor De Costa's just arrived. Oh, and Paul is here as well. Did they introduce themselves?
Paul Roach, Windsor and Eton Town Manager.
Councillor De Costa, do you want to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Chair. It's Winston De Costa, Councillor for Clewer and Dedworth West, member of the panel.
Thank you very much. So I request that meeting participants do not speak unless I specifically invite you to do so. Once I've invited you to speak, before you do so, please state your name and the capacity in which you are speaking if appropriate. I would also ask officers to speak at appropriate times. If any individual attempts to disrupt the meeting, I am able to use my powers in the Constitution to adjourn the meeting or have the individual removed. We'll now start on the agenda items. Do you have any apologies for absence, Lawrence?
Yes, Chair. Apologies received from Councillor Knowles and he is substituted by Councillor Helen Price.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any declarations of interest from the members of the panel? Okay, the minutes were sent out as part of the public document pack. So are we happy to approve them as a true and accurate record of the last meeting? Yes. Okay, so they're approved.
Councillor De Costa's got his hand up.
Oh, okay. Councillor De Costa?
Chair, I'm happy for the minutes to be approved. I think the things that's relating to me weren't quite what they said, but that's fine. I will come back with any other business to comment on the two items which related to me.
Okay, thank you. And the actions were followed up and they were also in the public documents pack, mainly the answers from Shasta on the internet questions. So thank you, Lawrence, for putting those together. So we'll now move on. Actually, we do have a slight change to the agenda. Unfortunately, Chris Joyce was unable to attend this evening. He couldn't even attend virtually. So unfortunately, we're not going to be able to include the update for Vision for Windsor today in today's meeting. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to provide a substitute or any other documentation. So we do apologise for that. We will ensure that it is on the agenda for the January meeting. So we will hand over now to Luella and Lataro from Busy Buttons.
Sorry, Chair, can I? Sorry, I should have said matters arising. So can I just refer to a couple of items in the minutes, please?
Yes.
Okay, so the two items are one relating to, it said that I was going to go away and find out about a budget for this forum. That wasn't quite right. I think the idea was that I would work with officers to find a budget for the forum. And I haven't heard from any officers, so I've made contact with Louise Freeth, who's the head of revenue and benefits. And so I will make sure that I chase that up with her to see where we can source some money funding for the Windsor Forum to help with community activities or whatever the grant specifies we can do. So that was the first point. I'm pushing that one forward. The second point was in relation to trying to open up a path with using perhaps the Welcome to Windsor, the Gateway funding, which Mr. Durrant said he would go and check up on and see what we'd come back with. I was really disappointed to see that the response was that there are no plans to do anything right now, because it was only a request to say, well, what's available? But interestingly, speaking to some of the people, some of the businesses under the arches, they have said that they would be willing to help fund any opening up of that entrance to the coach park, which would obviously save tourists, and especially those who are vulnerable, can't walk, a lot of walking space, and obviously mean that the footfall to the businesses under the arches will be substantially increased. So I will chase that up with Andrew Durrant, and perhaps also speak to Paul, who's on the meeting today, to see whether we can expedite that quickly. So those were the two things I wanted to mention in relation to the meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. So it looks like, yeah, that sounds good. Thank you for doing that, Councillor Costa. So before we move on to busy buttons, we've got, just wanted to explain the other topics that we've got will be virtual speakers. So we've got Stephen Hedges, Clerk to Cox Green Parish Council, who's going to explain to us about how parish councils work. And then we've got the town manager update, which Paul is also joining us virtually. So we have Luella and Lataro in the room, so I will hand over to you. Thank you. If you want to press the red button on your microphone, yeah, perfect.
Thank you for having us here today. So my name is Lataro, and I'm one of the volunteers and co-founders of Busy Buttons School Charity in Windsor.
And my name is Luella, and I'm the other co-founder of Busy Buttons School Charity. And thank you for having me here. And here we have Leon, one of our youth ambassadors as well, attending here on behalf of the young people and Busy Buttons.
We'll try to get this screen shared. Also disable participants screen sharing.
So how to just make you co-host? Okay, try it now.
Right. So, right. So, I think that was the last screen. Okay, boom. Try that again. So, Busy Buttons School Charity in Windsor George. You might have visited us or seen us. We are an inclusive charity helping each child find a unique potential through creativity and imagination. And most of you might know us through the community projects we've done, or creative courses for young people in the local community. But today we will talk about the lesser known aspect of service that the charity offers. And many of you already know about much of the statistics that's out there. A recent NHS statistic showed that almost 1 in 5 of our young people suffer from mental health problems. We can see this firsthand at the charity. We have young people referred to us, and we have seen that anxiety can lead to school avoidance, isolations, self-harm, antisocial behavior, and in some cases criminality. or a pathway towards criminality. This statement here gives us both hope, but it's something to consider that anxiety is not a personality disorder. It's a response to a situation. And the situations can be many. Sometimes it can be special needs, such as autism, ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia. We actually call them superpowers. And saying that, we have many young people attending our programs that has superpowers, but they have no anxiety. So they're well supported, and they're very happy young people with very special abilities. But in some cases, it can be one of the factors, and being misunderstood. It can also be a result of bullying or domestic abuse, and that can also. So many of these young people, they actually face situations that most adults would really struggle and crumble under. Our charity and work started as a response, a first-hand experience of what the results of that can be. Would you like to?
Several years ago, we were unfortunate enough, or I would say now fortunate enough, that we were attacked by a bunch of young people on a perfectly beautiful sunny evening. We're fortunate to be alive, sitting here. I could have gotten raped. He could have been killed. We escaped, luckily. But the young people who did so were from the ages 11 and all the way to 21, 15 to 21, 20 of them, in a park close by to where we lived in London at the point. And they worked like clockwork, and they were watchers and they were doers. The younger ones watched, the older ones did. And we were lucky to escape from there. We did all the right things. We escaped. Long story short, after counseling ourselves between us, receiving counseling, after moving out of the area, we questioned ourselves as in why these young people had no empathy. They had nothing to lose, obviously, and so for them, those few minutes were powerful for them. They gave them an empowerment which normally they didn't have. They had nothing to forego. They had no mentoring. They had nothing to lose if they were put in prison, or they didn't feel responsible, of course, for their behavior. And it made us think that these young people had nothing to lose, and hence they looked for situations to give them empowerment. But what if we work with what we had been fortunate enough to learn and study and work with and be passionate about, and we could empower them with positive instances and positive experiences, empower them with skills and a good feeling about doing good things, and contributing to the community instead of being, getting into trouble. And the statistics say it all if you just have to look through a newspaper daily. Even. So we started working with young people, and it's been a long story, and here we are now. We worked with the youth offending, we worked with young people who don't have any superpowers or don't have any needs, but we embrace them all, and we're fortunate to do what we can. So we believe in early intervention, because had these young people probably been helped or guided or given an alternative or helped to grow a passion about something that they didn't know they could do because they hadn't been exposed to it, it could have been another story. And so we believe that with what we can offer, this is a case story that you can see. AB had no confidence and constantly clung to his mother. He was selective mute and was unable to make eye contact and appeared fearful and anxious. When we observed, this is after a while, after several months, when we observed AB in busy buttons, he was a lively and cheerful little boy and was playing and chatting away with the other two children present. And this was from a lead wellbeing and mental health practitioner in NHS. This is one of the many stories that we have to share, and we're so fortunate that we can and reach out to these children and help them and give them a helping hand. And again, as we emphasize, anxiety is not an illness; it's a state of mind, and we all have anxiety at some point in our lives, except they can actually can have consequences, which are not so very nice. And so we hope to, with our early intervention, help them.
So one response that we had after COVID, and again, it came out of families approaching us saying that the children had been out of school for a period of time, up to 2 years at times. We started to run once a week a program during school hours for young people, and that was isolating at home, and also some one-to-one. And that's was to battle. We didn't know the name of it back then, but it's battle emotion-based school avoidance. That has now grown, and we have referrals from camps, social services, early help, local schools, adoption services, also domestic abuse charities. And we are very, very pleased to say that 55% of all those young people that attended that vision for the past 2.5 years has either come back to school, or if they were at risk of dropping out of school, they are now able to stay in school and achieve. Another very short example was a boy who was selective mute for 3 years, and when it went to a point that he would actually wet himself in the morning out of anxiety, and he's now diagnosed as autistic. It wasn't so obvious, but he was experiencing extreme anxiety, and a very supportive school. After a term, he asked to sit in the front of the class so he can follow class better, and he started to speak. He started to speak in school, started to share his experiences, and he also, after a period of time, he started to show his peers how to glue, how to paint. So it gave him that confidence. And we are very pleased to announce that this year we submitted all the children's work at these buttons, but as part of that was also these children that themselves think that they can't achieve anything. And we were selected the best art school by Craft Council UK. We had some shortlisted students, and we had a national winner. But as an organization, we got the Yinka Ilori, the Designers Award, as the best art school.
This is what they had to say about it. So they awarded us for recognizing the excellence in developing work that celebrates both the individual voice and their diverse community as a whole. And it helps create space for learners to explore their personal approaches. I won't read the rest of the whole of it, because I know we have to proceed to the next one. But
we have also had 3 young people selected to display the work at the Royal Academy of Arts, out of 21,500 nationwide entrants. So it just goes to show that, superpowers, and it doesn't really go job. Early intervention, creative opportunities and positive experiences. Once these young people start to gain momentum and confidence, we do invite them to join programs with the other young people, which then act as a role model for them. Holiday programs where they spend the whole day and whole week. That's wellbeing camps, Saturday classes, theatre productions, and also the Duke of Edinburgh Award, where the other young people act as a role model for them, and they make new friends. And we had a positive story to share.
I'm doing my Duke of Edinburgh's award as part of Busy Buttons, because Busy Buttons is a directly licensed Duke of Edinburgh award scheme. And as part of my Duke of Edinburgh award volunteering, I decided I was going to tutor one of the children that do go to the alternative provision to play piano, because I'm a keen pianist. And now we've progressed to a level that we are actually going to perform with the piano for our Christmas fair on the 10th of December. So please do, everyone, please do come. And yes, thank you.
So the peer support is also very encouraging. And then obviously we did mention the Duke of Edinburgh Award, which we've had young people complete that were had school avoidance.
I just like to add, all our programs are free for low-income families, and we also offer the Duke of Edinburgh Awards program for free. That's all the levels, the skills, volunteering, physical, and expedition. And so children don't have to have it as a deterrent for due to socioeconomic reasons or due to other family. Let's say, more than often it happens that the family hasn't even thought of doing a Duke of Edinburgh. No one has done it ever. So how can my son do it? But we make it possible for them to take part in our community engagement workshops and events and empower them and the family to come and integrate as a family in the community.
And the community engagement projects and inclusion is very important. Obviously, this involves not only these children, it involves all the children and local schools and other organizations that we work with in the community. But it's so important for these families, especially families that feel isolated, feel cut off, that they can actually be part of things like the light switch on, or we've had other events in Windsor and for them to feel part. You might have seen the Platinum Orb that was displayed on the long walk. They were so proud to actually have been part of creating that art piece along with 1,000 others. So we feel it's really important to have that inclusion and make them feel a part of their community, ownership and responsibility and answerability towards the community where they live, not cut off.
So here we had schools, we had ladies from an anxiety group that we run. We have children from all kinds of different kinds of schools. And if it was not possible for the children to come from special needs school, then we would go over to them and work with them with our volunteers. So they too are included. And when they come to the long walk and see their work on display or wherever else the venue might be, and see that they've been contributing to this larger project, but not knowing the other groups, but then they realize that actually all form part of this community. It's wonderful for them to see their work being given that importance, and it boosts their confidence, and most likely they're going to go back and think, yeah, I can do that again.
And we do need your support, both from the community, but also from the council, because the most pressing need, we guess, is that Windsor Yards, as you know, is going to be redeveloped. So we are going to lose a base, a centre that we've been in now for almost 7 years. And we need to find something before that happens so that we can continue offering this seamlessly.
And we need to raise awareness of what we do, because many people don't realize what we do. They see we never put a sad child's face. We never put them and a picture of them when they're at their lowest. We always celebrate their victories and their joys, which is what we like people to remember them. So more than often, people don't realize what Busy Buttons does. They just think, they might think, I can't say for sure, that it's all happy, cheerful, lovely children doing art, and that's it. Many people come to us and say, oh, we didn't really know that you do this. We're small, we're volunteer-led, and we work very, very long hours to always portray them at their best. So we do need to raise awareness, and with your help and support, we really hope that we can integrate them better and offer them more support.
Thank you so much. And I wondered, I don't know how well with time, we had a 2-minute video that shows the so we just get it up very quickly. Now, not all the families again and the children involved in this video were referred, but there are children here that have not been able to attend school, or been either suspended or risk of exclusion, but
I never thought they could even do that. And even today, they say it was amazing by far. So it's so important, these things that we don't realize, and the far-reaching effects of them.
And I would say we are also so fortunate to be a part of this wonderful community where this was the light switch on. and Lantern Parade that Busy Buttons did together with Paul Roach and the town. And it was such a wonderful opportunity for these young people that feel completely disconnected to actually be able to perform and be part of the celebration.
Don't know all about that thing, but it's going to be around the doors and it's on the middle school as well. This being.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. That's very interesting. Does anyone have any questions that they would like to ask? Yes, Jim.
Can you down your microphone, please?
Introduction. It was just a quick one. Are you based purely in Windsor, or do you do the southeast?
I mean, we all, we have children coming from, so thank you. We have children from, we don't say no to any child who comes from even outside of Windsor. So we have Windsor, we have Slough, we have Ascot, High Wycombe, Bracknell, Staines.
So the sole location is Windsor.
Yes, we just one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Price.
Thank you. With the yards being developed, and that's where you're currently located, have you got anywhere to go once that development takes place?
No, not yet. No, we haven't, and we are looking actively. Obviously, volunteer-led. We volunteer-led and run. It's always a lot, looking for that at the same time as dealing with the new referrals and delivering the programs. But no, we do any ideas and any support. Please do contact us, because we have not got anything lined up yet.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry, Councillor Buckley. I represent Datchet, Horton and Raysbury. I'd like, if you could share maybe some screenshots or something, or some sort of presentation with the chair. Maybe you could share it with all the councillors.
Yes.
Because I'd be more than happy to promote in our ward what you do.
Thank you.
And I'm sure all the councillors would feel exactly the same across the borough. So that would be very helpful. We had a like snippet, just something we could share on social media with our residents, because what you do is mind-boggling, and you need to be, thanked by everyone. Just say, you know, you've got our full support, I'm sure, from everyone here. Yeah, if you could share, it'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, see that. Does anyone else have any other questions? Okay, and thank you very much. You're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting. Oh, sorry, I'm sorry, I did ask you, I think you said no, yeah. Councillor Wilson.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. So I was just waiting to make sure all members of the public had asked if they wanted to. I just wanted to say, I think the work of Busy Buttons is absolutely incredible. I visited their exhibition recently, and I think that, you know, the whole celebration of neurodiversity is really fantastic. So certainly noted the location issue, and I'll weave that into some work that Dave and I are doing. Yeah, just thank you, and incredible how you've kind of you've transformed your negative experience into something positive for other people. I think that's that's a fantastic thing to do. So thank you.
Thank you. And you see, you've got your Christmas fair on the 10th of December. So.
Yes.
And I know that you're going to be also at the Christmas fair in Dedworth as well, on the 26th of November. So yeah, so if anyone wants to come along to those events and support, that would be great. Okay, so thank you. You're welcome to stay, obviously, or you know, if you want to, you can. But we'd like to have you. The next topic is parish and town councils, powers and responsibilities. We've got Stephen Hedges, who's the clerk to Cox Green Parish Council, who's going to join us virtually to talk us through what a parish council does. Now, obviously this is quite topical for Windsor, because we've got Councillor Davies here, who's going to lead the consultation about whether we have a Windsor Town Council and what that really means for us. And we want to sort of make it clear to residents that this won't replace the borough. This is an extra layer, and we want to understand what that extra layer might have responsibility for, how much it's going to cost us, and things like that. So, Stephen, thank you for joining us. We will hand over to you for your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Lawrence, do you have the presentation that you can put up, please?
Yes, just give me a sec.
Okay, no problem. Whilst Lawrence is doing that, I'll just say that I've been a clerk for 25 years, and I'm here as chair of the Clerks Forum, which actually represents and includes all the parish and town councils within the borough. So if you want to hit F5, Lawrence, and that'll put it on full screen. That's okay. F5 does it, or just hit the presentation at the very top there.
Sorry, just the Zoom thing's in the way. Hang on. Right. Yeah, you see that?
I can see it. As long as everyone else can, that's fine. So just to let you know, I've been asked to give a presentation on what parish and town councils are and what they do in relation to the upcoming governance review, as you just said about the Windsor Town Council and how that may differ. So if you could give the next slide, please. I'm assuming on the next one, because I can't see it on my screen there. It's I've still got the main one showing on my screen there, Lawrence.
You see it
there
now?
we go. We can. Yes, that's it. Perfect. So whilst it shouldn't need saying, this is quite a common view of what a parish council looks like. I'm here to say that this is a fictional representation and it's not a parish council. Next slide, please. So, what are parish councils? Simply put, they are local authorities in their own right. They're created by legislation that's over 100 years old. In fact, nearly all the parish and town councils within the RBWM area actually predate the unitary authority by decades. In terms of size, they vary hugely from the very small village or hamlet populations to over 130,000. And to put that in context, Royal Borough of Windsor and Maidenhead's population is around 153,000. So there are parish and town councils with populations on a par with the borough. With such variations, including the services and the facilities provided, the budgets also have a huge range from under 1,000 through and into the millions. So they're generally referred to as local councils. This differentiates them from principal councils such as county or district councils. And there are about 10,400 across England. So as you can see, there's no generic description that can be effectively applied other than the most local tier of local government in terms of both service delivery and representation. Next slide, please. So in terms of naming, parish councils can actually resolve to call themselves either town, village, community or neighbourhood councils. They have the same legislation that applies to them all, so it's just in the name. It's done simply by a resolution of the council. I should also point out that there are also 8 city councils, as they have letters patent, but they can be confused with principal councils. To give you an example, Manchester City Council is a principal council, whereas Wells City Council is a local council. The only other thing to point out is that a town council may resolve to refer to the chairman as a town mayor. Next slide, please. So where do they fit in? An area has 1, 2 or 3 tiers of local government, each with their own responsibilities that apply to the area they cover. In an area such as ours here, we have a unitary authority which incorporates both tiers 1 and 2, so that's the county and district tiers. Local councils, parish and town, are tier 3, although where there isn't a parish, then the district council can carry out those functions. Each tier is an independent authority in its own right. They are not subservient to any others, although permissions may be required from a relevant authority to carry out certain works or actions. A bit like highways works, permissions are required from the highways authority. Next slide, please. Powers and duties. A power is the legislation that allows a council to do something, and a duty is a requirement imposed on it, such as the duty to consider the crime and disorder implications of its actions and its functions. Local councils also have a duty to provide allotments if there is a demand. In fact, the primary responsibility sits with parish and town councils and not county, district or borough councils. All the work and the actions of a council must have a lawful basis, and therefore they need to flow back to a relevant power. It's important to note that all the powers and duty of a local council apply to all local councils, including newly created ones. Therefore, from day one, they have all the powers, whether they exercise them or not. Next slide, please. So these are the headline powers. And I've provided an additional document which gives you further details, including the legislation from them. So from the many possibilities that flow from that include subsidising a community bus service, establishing and maintain a car sharing scheme, taxi fare concessions, traffic calming, creation of public rights of way, dealing with litter and graffiti, including the issue of fines, tourism publicity, provision of market bylaws, and much, much more. Next slide, please. So these are all town and parish council facilities. Each and every one of these derives from the powers available to a local council. Other facilities can include swimming pools, sports facilities such as courts, pitches and grounds, entertainment venues, laundrettes, and until recently, a Berkshire Town Council actually owned a pub, although that's not a reason to create a town council. Next slide, please. So, the main source of income is usually the precept, which is a levy that's collected by a principal authority, in this case the borough. In fact, it has a duty to collect it on behalf of all the precepting authorities. So that includes the Police and Crime Commissioner and Fire Authority. And so it's an element of the council tax bill. It's not a grant from the borough. Currently, and unlike other precepting authorities, a local council's precept is not capped. However, the Secretary of State keeps this under review and can apply a cap if they consider rises to be excessive. There is no central government funding for local councils. In fact, there's no mechanism in place to provide that direct funding directly to those parish and town councils. So other funding sources include fees, charges, rents for the services and facilities. Therefore, all a parish and town council's funding is locally derived. So as well as SIL and Section 106, capital expenditure can also be funded via loans from the Public Works Loan Board through a very prescribed process. And prudent planning of earmarked reserves over time allows for capital replacements such as play equipment and other identified projects. Next slide, please. So the situation in Berkshire is that we have 104 civil parishes across 6 unitary areas. So 3 of those unitaries are fully parished. Reading hasn't got any at all. Slough has 3 and they're on the periphery of it. And RBWM has 15 parishes, 13 parish councils, 1 town council and a parish meeting. Obviously, the 2 main urban areas, Maidenhead and Windsor, are unparished. Next slide, please. So this part of the presentation is simply highlighting the salient points for consideration and to add context ahead of any governance review. It doesn't imply what a Windsor Town Council would look like. It's more a case of what you may wish to look at to help better inform the process as well as your viewpoint. Next slide, please. So these are statistics that you'll be well aware of, and it's for the Windsor unparished area. But it clearly demonstrates that using the tax base as the comparison, a Windsor Town Council would be a large council, and therefore you need to consider it in that context, and that is important. Next slide, please. Therefore, as a large town council, any comparisons need to reflect this. So just how large? Well, using the tax base for comparison, as that's the singular statistic that can be used, Windsor Town Council would be around the 35th largest council in England. In Berkshire, it would actually be the 3rd largest. Therefore, it's those local councils that you should perhaps be comparing with. There's no parish or town council within the borough that can be used as a direct comparison. In that vein, I've provided the precept data set for those larger councils. Obviously, their budgets are higher, but it's only precept data that's centrally collated. Next slide, please. So locally, within Berkshire, the closest comparative council is Newbury Town Council. It has a similar population and tax base and provides the same type of services and facilities, as you can see. I've also supplied the Newbury Town Council's budget report document, which helpfully includes its 5-year strategy. That gives you a better overview of what a town council's priorities, objectives and service delivery actually look like. My counterpart at Newbury has since supplied the final print of the 5-year strategy document, and I'll pass that to Lawrence so that can be circulated. It is actually a really interesting document, and it provides a really good insight for a large town council. Next slide, please. So a tier 2 district council has powers to carry out what's called concurrent functions. These are services and facilities that elsewhere within an authority's area are provided by parish and town councils. There is legislation that allows for the separate charging of the concurrent functions in the area where they're being delivered by a tier 2 council. This is known as special expenses and provides a mechanism which can be considered fair if the charges are applied to the council taxpayers of the areas in which those services are delivered. So RBWM undertakes concurrent functions within the borough, and it applies this charging regime in a limited way to the unparished areas only. This is referenced in borough reports as SAE, or Special Area Expenses. Next slide, please. So all of these are services and facilities that a town council have powers to deliver, and many are being carried out as a concurrent function at the moment. So just a note that whilst I mention at the bottom there delegated functions, that's not something that a community governance review could consider. It's something that local and principal councils can enter into if they wish, hence its relevance here as to what a parish and town council can do. Next slide, please. On this, I've mapped the allotments and some of the recreation, open spaces and play areas, just to give an illustration of the sites within Windsor that are currently being maintained as a concurrent function. It's an illustration of just some of the provision. Next slide. Thanks. Finally, so what would a Windsor Town Council be like? As I say there, it's an impossible question to answer. That can only be decided by the town council itself and its councillors. The resources it has, the assets, the finance, but ultimately it's actually the residents of Windsor. Those are the ones that will actually shape the council. And that's the way forward for any council. And last slide, please. I hope that gives you a bit of an insight. It's more of an operational overview because obviously as an officer, operational is the side of things that I deal with. If you wanted a viewpoint from the other side of things, from a member, it might be an idea to invite a member from one of the large town councils to give you a presentation. But I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you very much. That's very interesting. So do we have any questions from any of the residents here? Yeah, Jim, do you like to ask your questions?
Sorry, me again. A few things actually. The precept levy, how is that negotiated or worked out with the larger council with RBWM? Is there an understanding that it's 20% of the agreed income, or is it hashed out somewhere?
No, what it is there's no negotiations with it. What it is a parish and town council sets its own budget for its own priorities and its own services and facilities. And then when it comes to the figure at the end, the precept requirement, so it's the net requirement, because you obviously have an expenditure minus any other income like your interest, rents, fees, charges, and those sort of things. And that figure is the levy which is imposed onto the borough council to collect. They have no say whatsoever in the levy that's actually collected. They have to put that as part of the council tax bill, just like the fire authority or the police authority. So there is no negotiation on that. It's a completely separate organisation. A parish and town council is an individual level of local government.
And if I may, a lot of the presentation there talked about the responsibilities, which obviously is a vital point of the council, and sure there's all things that we'd like to get done there in terms of benches and allotments, whatever. But in terms of what we a parish council is actually empowered to do for the community in a less maintenance-based sense, does a parish or a town council have more independence in terms of deciding on having a market or deciding what to do with festivals, or that kind of more social side of a community?
There are some social elements to it. There was another document that I provided, not only what parish and town councils can do in the legislation that they have. There is another one which was the House of Commons document with regards to parish and town councils, and that has quite a lot of information. But what I would suggest is take a look at Newbury Town Council's website and look at its strategy and overview document. That gives you a really good feel of what a large town council does. Obviously, Newbury Town Council's been in for a long time, so that would give you a comparison. But obviously, you can only do what you have a power to do. So if another authority actually has the power and you don't, like providing social services, care services, and those type of things, that's not something a parish or town council can do because it does not have a legal power to do that. That sits with either a tier 1 or a tier 2. So in this case, the unitary authority, which is the borough council. So you're restricted by the powers that you have, just as the borough is restricted by the powers it has. Unfortunately, or fortunately, the borough council can't raise a standing army. That's actually government, so that's a different level of government. So we all have different responsibilities. You have to have a power to be able to do something there. So I would suggest looking at that Newbury Town Council document, because that probably answers the vast majority of the questions of what a town council of a similar size could actually do.
Thank
you. Thank you. Okay, gentleman here's got a question.
Yes, hello. Yes, I'm a local resident. My name is Steve Lowe. What are the next steps? What's the roadmap? I remember going to a meeting
That I think that's probably outside of what I was presenting. If you're talking about the next step of the community governance review, that's actually with the borough council. They're the ones that are looking at that. So I wouldn't be able to answer that question. I don't work for the borough. I work for another parish council, and hence why I'm here presenting on that side. So that would probably be Councillor Davis that would be answering that one.
Councillor Davies is here. Would you be able to provide an answer? Thank you.
Sure, or happy for any more sort of questions to see go first and
Pick that up. Okay, yeah, so Mr. Webb, you've got a question?
Hello, my name's John Webb. I'm a resident in Windsor. I'd like to understand what the options are in terms of a parish or town council and their offices and their clerk, and whether they have to have their own offices and clerk, or could they share facilities with another parish?
There's two different elements to that one. You can do what's called grouping, and that's not something that I think would be considered under the governance review. And to be honest, if I was anyone looking at the governance review, I would not be looking at grouping. But with regards to offices and even sharing of officers, the size of the council that you're looking at, to be honest, it ought to be itself. I wouldn't be, if I was in that position, I wouldn't be looking to actually share office or officers, unless it's for a specific project. I wouldn't be looking at sharing officers with another parish or town council, purely and simply because, of course, the size of the council really needs its own dedicated staff. You really need to appreciate that a Windsor Town Council is large, and I don't mean geographically. I mean, in terms of other parish and town councils across the country. As I say, it will be the third largest in Berkshire, which can be good. Obviously, it comes with its own challenges, but then again, we all have different challenges regardless of our size, in effect.
Thank you. Gentleman at the end, would you like to come forward and use the microphone here? Thank you. You could introduce yourself.
I'm Nigel Griffin. I'm a local resident, King Road. Thank you very much for the presentation. It's very informative. I may have missed it because it was a lot of data. You didn't seem to use the word planning at all. One of the things which I think the residents of Windsor felt is that planning rests too much in Maidenhead, rather than Windsor residents having a say in planning issues about the design of their own environment, their own town. So is planning, I got the impression actually from other councils that they frequently comment on planning matters and give their views about planning matters to those that have to make the decisions. And I really would hope that as we progress with our town council, that they will have the opportunity to come in.
Yes, they can. Yes. What it is it would be the representation role of a local council is obviously to take the views of the local community, and they give those as representations to the consultations of planning applications. As you're aware, the local planning authority is in a tier 1 or tier 2, so in this case the unitary. The borough council is the local planning authority that makes the decision on that. Parish and town councils are not statutory consultees, but they have a statutory right to be informed of planning applications, and there is a long-standing convention that it has always applied within the borough and across all local planning authorities, that parish councils can contribute and submit to planning applications. With regards to planning design in an area, and this will be really getting ahead of ourselves here, you'll be talking of a neighbourhood plan. I believe that Windsor, part of Windsor, has a neighbourhood plan in place anyway, and that becomes part of the local development framework. So that would actually have input into it. But as a representative role, yes, a town council most definitely can submit its comments and submissions to the planning authority. But of course, that has to be in terms of planning legislation, planning policy. It can't be a fact that the town council doesn't like it. It has to have a valid planning reason, just like any other consultee would. So yes, there is a representative role for a town council as well.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Da Costa, you've got a question?
Thank you very much, Chair. Mr. Hedges, that was a really useful presentation, and I welcome the likening of us to various benchmarking, if you like, to other councils, so we can get a picture of how we might operate and what we might look like, and what we might sort of look, sound, and smell like. That's very useful, especially in relation to Newbury. Thank you for that. I think this question is more aimed towards Councillor Davies rather than you, Mr. Hedges. So I'm from Clywendale with Western Windsor, and a number of my thousands, 2,000 to 3,000 of my residents are actually in Bray Parish Council. So if you like, we've got this strange artifice where our residents live in Windsor, but they don't actually end up not supposed to be in the previous Windsor Council. So I just want just assurance that the maps shown were just for illustration purposes, and that my residents, or even the residents on the Squires, on the new AL21 site, that will not be certainly excluded from this process, but there is scope for them to be included in this process. Thank you.
I can help with one element of that. The community governance review as it stands, the last one you did, was only looking at the unparished area. If you are to extend that into parished areas as well, a community governance review of other parished areas would need to take place alongside that. So at the moment, my understanding, and Councillor Davis will obviously confirm these bits and pieces, is that you would only be looking at the unparished area. I appreciate that previous historic boundaries were different, and I do know that borough wards cross across, but at the moment you're only looking at the unparished area. So that map that I put up is the unparished area of Windsor. So, but Councillor Davis would obviously have the fuller details on that.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Davies, are you okay to answer these questions?
Yes, thank you very much,
you.
Chair. Councillor Karen Davis, I'm lead member for Climate and Biodiversity and Windsor Town Council. So I'm going to be chairing the community governance review once we get started. Thank you very much, Stephen, for a really informative presentation. That was terrifically useful. Because Windsor is unparished and has been, you know, and sort of lots of us who are here don't actually have any direct experience with town and parish councils and that level of government. So I thought it would be really, really helpful for people to get a bit of insight from someone who knows, to sort of like, you know, really that sort of lowdown about what they actually can and can't do and don't do. So thank you very much. Really appreciate your time. So there were two questions, I think. I'll take Steve's first. So on the timeline, so we're working on the basis that should the feeling be in Windsor that people do want a town council, that we would be ready for that council to be elected to in May 2027 with the next borough and parish elections. So obviously we had the elections in May this year for the parishes and town councils as well as the borough. So the aim would be that we would be ready for, that be the will of Windsor, that we would have be ready for that council to be elected to at those elections along with the other parishes. And so we're sort of in the process of working back from that at the moment. I'm very glad to have Kirsty Hunt here this evening, who's
Service lead, elections and
service lead for elections and democratic services, just to get it right. So Kirsty's going to be leading from the officer side on the review. There's obviously a lot of work to do from the council perspective. We just touched on things like the finances there, where the services that the borough is currently providing for Windsor that might be provided by the parish council. Obviously those are not standalone contracts, they're just sort of like part of bigger contracts and things like this. So it's really good that we've got some time to unpick all of those. Once we start, we'll be writing in terms of reference for the review. Kirsty will be writing in terms of reference for the review. And one of the questions that we do is to answer Wisdom's question in with this as well. One of the things that we do need to decide is whether, as previously, we do a review of the currently unparished area of Windsor, or whether we would seek to have a review at the same time of the boundary between Bray and the sort of would-be Windsor parish. Last time we decided it was a lot of, that it was a sort of maybe an added complication, that it's maybe sort of like they were sort of almost two separate issues as to whether we wanted to have a parish or town council in Windsor, and whether the people that are currently in Bray Parish Council wanted to be in with Windsor or wanted to be in with Bray. Last time we decided that we would keep them separate, and that once the Windsor Town Council was formed, if it was formed, that we would have that there could then, if there was a desire amongst those people that lived in Bray currently, if they wanted to have another community governance review in Bray to make a decision, that we would do that separately. But we haven't made a final decision or prejudged it for this time, so that's still, that decision's still to be made. We're very lucky. We've got Councillor Suzanne Cross, who's one of the borough councillors for Bray, is also on Bray Parish Council. We've got some good contacts. I know Kirsty's got some good contacts with the with people in Bray as well. So we're sort of keeping the lines of communication open. And yeah, currently working on the sort of getting ready from the sort of officer side for, with regards to like services and finances and things like that. Preparing a terms of reference. We decided at the full council back in July that we were going to do the community governance review. We haven't rushed into it because we do have this time until, because we're sort of working towards 2027, we've got the time. We want to take our time and do it really well and make good decisions and get the fullest amount of information for people. So we're doing that preparatory work at the moment. And well, yeah, once it does start, the reason what I was working up to was the reason that we're taking our time now and doing the preparatory work is once it's figured by agreeing the terms of reference, you have to complete it within 12 months. So we want to have that sort of good information all ready for us to use when we get there. So yeah, so once we get started, the review's completed in a 12-month period.
Thank you. Mr. Webb, do you have a question?
Yes, please. Question for Karen. With your terms of reference, will you be considering just a single town council, or is there scope to consider two parish or town councils, one for the town centre and one for West Windsor?
What we'll do, from my recollection of last time, is that we have two consultation periods. So we would have just the terms of reference, and then I believe there will be, Kirsty will correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is that we would have a consultation on the terms of reference. It would be possible if there was a strong feeling in one direction or another for us to include that within the terms of reference. And then we would have a second consultation at the end where we would have the sort of yes or no as to whether we would come up with based on that, we would come up with a suggested model for one town council, or it could be organised differently. And that would then be consulted on again with people able to sort of give both yes or no answer, but also give qualitative answer as well. So we could sort of collect data at both stages. There would be both a yes, no, and there will be a opportunity to give a qualitative response, so we can get as much information from people as possible, and we would obviously consider all responses fully. Does that answer the question? Okay.
I think you've got a follow-up question, and then
Yeah, a follow-up question based on the date being 2027. That's 3.5–4 years away. In the meantime, Windsor residents are not getting the benefit directly of the precept that they're paying currently. So I'd like to ask for members of this forum to approach Cabinet to request a Cabinet resolution whereby money is set aside in the budget for this forum for financial year 24-25 or sooner in order to fund the purchase of Christmas lights at Dedworth Road in Clwyd and Dedworth East, Clwyd Dedworth West and Clwyd East wards, and to fund replacement lampposts which are currently considered unsuitable for supporting those Christmas lights. But also, like members of this forum, to approach Cabinet to request a resolution whereby money is set aside in the budget for this forum, financial year 24-25 or sooner, to fund the ongoing provision of hanging baskets and flower displays along the Dedworth Road. These requests are in line with this forum's constitution, which states the area forums are given the power to spend money as delegated by Cabinet resolution and to direct neighbourhood budget expenditure in unparished areas and to send reports with recommendations to Cabinet. So I'd like to ask the forum as a whole to request money for this forum to spend.
Does this not fall in line with what Councillor De Costa is looking into for
No, that was
in terms of
grants.
grants?
That was
No?
grants. I'm asking for our money that we're currently paying.
Yeah. So I don't know, Stephen, if we're asking if this is anything that you would be able to help us identify, perhaps.
Yeah, I can help you. However, I would suggest that you do need to get confirmation from your officers on this. At the moment, there is a unparished precept fund, a precept charge on the council tax bill. That charge is raised for the services and the concurrent functions that are carried out in Windsor. Obviously, it's at the behest of the Borough Council to raise that if it so wishes, remembering one of the key issues that a Borough Council has, that a Town Council doesn't have, is that a Borough Council is capped by legislation. So, of course, it will have to be considered in the round on that. But if you are looking at doing anything within the special expenses regime, that's something that you need to look at. So you can put that request through to the borough and they will then have to look at it within the special expenses regime. That's not an easy task. It's a very complicated process that it's got to be done. But obviously the resolution can go through to the borough for that. Just another thing to add there. You said about the timescale being for 2027. I would thoroughly endorse that. And the reason being is I actually work for Cox Green Parish Council. That was the last council within the Royal Borough of Windsor and Maidenhead to be created. So we're actually the newest one. I'm the new boy, even though I'm the oldest serving clerk. It's the newest council within Windsor and Maidenhead. And that period of time that you're talking about, you will need. Definitely. There is a huge amount of work to do. The last community governance review just touched on it, and I mean only touched on it. So that time between now and 2027, and as you quite rightly state, there is a specified period of a year that it all has to be completed for the community governance review. You will really do need that time beforehand to identify the services, to identify the costs for it. And those will just be options, because at the end of the day, obviously it will be down to the town council afterwards to decide how it goes forward. So I thoroughly endorse that time frame. Do not try and do it any quicker than that, because you will just end up with a knee-jerk reaction, which is in no one's interests, least of all the residents of Windsor, because that's what you're trying to do. So a really good timescale there.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Webb, we'll come back to you on your question. Mr. Endicott at the back, would you like to come forward and ask your question? Thank you.
Hello, it's nice to be at a town forum or a forum these days. That's hopefully the chair won't turn my mic off. Brilliant presentation, thank you very much. I'm chair of the Windsor Town Council Steering Group, so obviously I know quite a bit about what's going on, and the precept is obviously a key issue for people. Having spent the last couple of weeks putting soil down at the private park because my football team couldn't have a football pitch to play on, so I had to go and get some soil from the local garden centre to go, which of course meant going out of town because there's no garden centres and that sort of thing. So, you know, there is a definite need for this, and I'm wholly supportive of it. Now, my question to you is more to do with satisfaction surveys, because obviously, you know, for me, you know, paying £6 a month rather than £4 a month in the precepts, you know, doesn't make a big difference if that means I don't need to go down the garden centre to buy some soil. However, are there any satisfaction surveys across the parish councils, across RBWM, or maybe across the larger town councils or city councils across the country, which we can refer to, where we can actually get some meaningful data as to whether or not this is a worthwhile project?
My initial response on that would be, forgive me, but the satisfaction survey that you look, the best guide to it, sorry, would be that every 4 years there's an election. And if your residents are not happy with the direction you're going, they kick you out. And that happens. It doesn't just happen at borough councils or county councils, it happens with parish and town councils as well. So the satisfaction side of it, and because it's very, very local, parish and town councillors tend to be very attuned to the views of residents, very attuned. Borough councillors obviously are as well, but being in a much more localised area, yeah, you tend to know probably in advance of others when there's a problem. A lot of big town councils and some other parish and town councils do carry out satisfaction surveys, but they tend to be more on specific issues. So what's happening with, I don't know, grounds maintenance or streetlight services or this type of thing. They do it all in different ways. And obviously with 10,400 parish and town councils, there is a whole mix of ways of doing this. But it is a matter of engaging with your town council, as we're talking about a town council side of things, engaging with them, putting the priorities. And of course, it will be down to resourcing. The borough council is not the only one that has financial constraints. Every borough council does. Every parish and town council does. So, of course, you do have to weigh up the priorities. And so that is a consideration as you're going forward.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Griffin, did you have a question? Thank you.
Yeah, more of an observation, really. So I understand it. This town forum, I'm sure Helen Price has produced some constitutions of this forum, already has rate. I would have thought it could have easily meet your long list of requirements. I think it's time this town forum, we've got to wait for 3 years to do it, get off its butt, put up a plan, and ask for some money to get things done. It hasn't done so, as far as I know, in its existence. It's time to act, council.
Okay, thank you. So, yeah, thank you for your comments. As I said, we will discuss what we can do, and obviously try and get some money in the budget for next year. Obviously, nothing's going to happen this year, yeah, we've got a couple more questions. Lady, would you like to ask your question? Please introduce yourself.
Thank you. My name's Sue Pendry. I'm a Windsor resident, and listening to all this, and this is the first time I've heard it, with this extra level of sort of governance, does that mean there'll be an increase in the community charge then to cover all these extra expenditure? I don't know how the finance, is it coming out of the budget already, or is it an extra thing that's going to be added on to the community charge to run this?
So that's something that will be agreed with the town council, but at the moment we are in an unparished area. We pay what's called an unparished precept as part of our council tax. Now what the couple of gentlemen here are suggesting is that we ensure that at least some of that money is ring fenced for things that are actually in our area, so as they are in places that have a parish council, but we can also look at whether we increase that unparished precept. That might be something that we might want to consider. But yeah, when we have a town council, as Councillor Davies alluded to, we'll have a look at all the cost of all the services that town council will then take, and then have to decide what that precept will be. Councillor Davies, do you have anything to add?
Good question. So what will happen is, should we decide to form a town council or parish councils or whatever for the Windsor area, for the first year, so for the year 27 to 28, the borough council will decide what things the parish or town council will take over running for the first year, because there's nobody elected, because it doesn't exist as an entity, there's no one being elected to it. So for the first year, what usually happens is that the borough or district or whatever the sort of principal authority is, would allocate, they would usually start small and work up as a new council. So they would take on things like, strangely, I believe allotments are the only thing that technically parish councils have to, sort of have to take on. So they would usually start small with things like maybe allotments and parks and play areas or something like that, cemetery. So those things. Usually they would start small with something like that. And then once the council has been established, people have been elected to be, parish or town councillors, then obviously, so the budget would be set accordingly. So the budget that would be, the borough would be, the money that the borough would spend on those things for the currently unparished area would get transferred to the new council, and they would then take that up and run it. Obviously, it's not quite as simple as that, because there are contracts in place, that need to be unpicked and things like that. So, but that's basically it. And then after that, so the precept would be set according to the current. So we do pay a precept for Windsor at present. It's there on your council tax bill, but it's just sort of then goes into the general pot of of money that's spent in the borough. In subsequent years, then the new council would be able to set its own precept. Once we've got elected, democratically elected councillors, they would then be able to set their own precept, and it could be a bit higher, or it could be a bit lower. We've got a lot of, we can get lots of information on what the precepts are, and Stephen actually shared a couple. We can get lots of information on what the typical range would be, what other councils do. And then obviously, if once that council had found its feet, they could then go on and say, oh, actually, we want to, we think we would like to run, whatever. And then it's a process of negotiation between the principal authority and the local council as to what they want to, as to sort of like what they're going to sort of maybe hand over, what they would like to take on, and then sort of, the money sort of would follow with it. So there isn't a separate, there isn't any separate money for Windsor at the moment sitting there that's not being spent already. So it's not sort of, at the moment it just goes into the general pot to pay for all of those things, street lights and all the rest of it.
Thank you. But it does state in our constitution that, we need to request funds. So I suppose that's something we need to bear in mind for the budget.
I'm not a member of the forum, so I'll leave that one to you.
We'll check on the wording anyway, what we can do. But obviously, there's nothing that can be done until the next budget review. So, I've got a couple more questions. I'm trying to finish this at the top of the hour because we've got Paul Roach who's waiting patiently to give us this presentation. Councillor Buckley, you had a question?
Yes, just it's regarding going back to Councillor De Costa's comment on borders and wall borders, etc. And in regards to Bray, obviously there are a number of borders and cross walls around Windsor, unparished area. Would there be consideration in fairness to bring them all into consideration under this, rather than just Bray, being fair to all the different cross borders? I'm thinking particularly Old Windsor and Bolton's.
So at the moment, Bolton's is in Old Windsor Borough Ward, but doesn't come under Old Windsor Parish Council. So it's sort of, for the reasons best known to the Electoral Commission, they decided that the Boltons would go in with Old Windsor for the borough level ward, but it's not actually in the Old Windsor Parish Council area. So the Boltons is in the unparished area of Windsor, so it would be included in the review. There's, as far as I know, it's only these houses in Clewer and Edworth West that are in the Bray Parish, but in a Windsor ward, but also in Bray Parish. So that they're the only one that I believe is in two sort of different sort of geographical locations.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Price, do you have a question?
Yes, I think, was it Susan who asked the question? Oh, yeah. Yeah. I thought you were asking, would there be an additional cost of running a town council or whatever it is? And there would be some costs, which would be, you would employ a clerk, and there may be some other costs. But in terms of the whole budget that would be handling, it really would be quite minuscule, but yes, there would be some costs.
Thank you. You want to speak? Yes, yeah, Councillor Teasy.
Yeah, I just wanted to extend my thanks to Stephen as well. And I think for me, what you've highlighted is the size of a potential Windsor Town Council, because many of our experience of town parish councils is of quite small organisations. I think it's been quite an eye-opener, you know, what a large organisation this would be. That, you know, if you look at Newbury, they have a proper council building, you know, Guildhall type size, and you know, that's the sort of thing we'd really have to be thinking about. So that, as you say, there's an awful lot of work. We will need staff. We won't just have a parish clerk like a village parish might have. So it's an extremely large task. It's quite exciting, but a bit daunting as well. But it's really helped to put it into context. So thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone have any further questions? Yeah.
I was just really echoing the gentleman there who was talking about, you know, getting things moving and so on other subjects. But if you're talking about this being part of the platform, part of the finished product being part of the platform for 27, then, and it takes a year to go through the consultation, and forgive me, I'm rewatching The West Wing, so I might be a little on top of it, but you haven't got that long, really, in terms of actually getting a message out that goes beyond, you know, the 30 of us that pay attention to this and whoever on social media, realistically. And then you've got to try and convince them, which I assume would be, you know, a bit of door-to-door type stuff. Then you've got to get it into all of your platforms for whatever, you know, shade of the political agenda you are. And then you've got to tie that into being pro or not a Windsor Town Council. These things all, you know, it can take us 6 months to get a push during or something like that. So it's going to take you a long time to get to this point, right? And so if everyone, and everyone, every time we talk about this, is very keen to have this, then it seems like maybe even at this point we should be stepping up the way that the contact that it has with the more general population in Windsor and RBWM, and actually is part of a more significant debate than every time we have this talk. Everyone kind of wants it, but it seems like they need that first, whatever the first next step is. We should already be doing it, or should have done it already by this point.
Yeah, well, don't forget, I mean, we did do this before, when it was rejected, so, yeah, so it's sort of starting again. Yeah, sorry, ask your question.
Follow up on that question, maybe how does one get involved, if one wanted to get involved, and in the steering or planning or generally volunteering or supporting?
So I know there's a group of local residents who who's led by Mr. Endicott, who sat in the back there. So I'm sure he'd be interested in any support. But I'm sure they'll be running a new campaign at some point. So yeah, I would say look out for Windsor Town Council on social media. Sorry, I can't see.
I know.
Sorry, Councillor Davies.
Thank you. I know exactly behind the pillar, so we can't see each other. Yeah, I was just going to say we have started sort of, although we're working to a 2027 time scale, the work already has started. It's just, as I think Stephen was sort of alluding to as well, there's so much preparatory work because as an unparished area within the borough, there isn't the services are all provided by the borough. So say in Old Windsor, which was mentioned, they provide some of the services which the borough are providing here. So they have some services provided by the parish council and some by the borough, whereas obviously they're all being provided by the borough in Windsor. So there's an awful lot of preparatory work to do on sort of those on those sort of within the council, within the borough council. We're not sort of waiting until the last minute and then saying we're going to do it in a year. It's just that we're waiting until we're sort of trying to get work started and be in a good position before we have this like 1 year limit. But there will be lots more engagement with residents. We're sort of going to try and time in order to we were just talking about the timeline this afternoon and saying things like, you know, there are good opportunities for things like when the council tax bills come out in, you know, and things like once a year. We've been talking about what opportunities we can use, because there are not that many things that every resident gets on paper through the door, because obviously some of us are really interested in these things and come along to meetings and follow it on social media and stuff like that, but like not everybody is sort of fascinated in council business. So in order to get sort of to all residents, we're going to try and use those type of opportunities to reach beyond just those that are sort of really, you know, sort of interested already.
I just think you can engage more people via things like social media and then a tag at the end of your council tax bill, which most people, it's just that's very efficient and very council minded, and that's great. And you guys obviously have to do all of that, but the majority of the population are going to be looking at things that are a little bit more ethereal than who's in charge of the allotments or the cemetery. They just are. So it's more of a kind of, it's more of an ownership thing. Who are we as a town? And for that, you're talking about emotional rather than, you know, pure financial decisions. And that's why on social media, you know, we all know the common topic, and that is, it's an emotive reaction to the situation, not a political or financial one. I know they have to be taken into consideration, but it's in terms of, you know, warming up the water where everyone dives in. You need to be understanding people's emotional reaction to the idea and promoting or listening at least to it, rather than we've worked out how all the polls go together. You know, now how interested is everyone? It just feels a little more like you obviously have to focus on the practical and the political and the financial, and someone maybe should be thinking about the emotional content in terms of talking to people more readily on platforms larger than this, or an RBWM council meeting, because it's at the end of the day, it's going to be the 23,000 residents, whatever it is, that are going to make the decision on if it's a good idea or not, rather than, you know, if they're making fiscal sense. It's going to be that's going to be the decision maker.
Yeah, totally. So that there will be engagement from the borough on. So in this instance, for the community governance review, that is quite a technical governance thing. So, and it's important that those of us who are taking part as members and officers in the community governance review keep an open mind and don't predetermine any outcomes. Obviously, we believe that it's what people in Windsor want. When I took part in the community governance review last time around, and the response to the consultation was something like 600, and I can't remember the top of my head, a few years ago now, 682, thank you, John, 682 for and 100 against. So there wasn't, you know, we were in no doubt that there was an overwhelming majority of people that were in favour of the Windsor Town Council. The community governance review did come up and say that there should be a Windsor Town Council. It was then obviously for reasons best known to those that that voted accordingly. It was, when it actually came to it, it was voted down. If we didn't think that that people wanted this, then we wouldn't be, doing this. But for me personally, for the community governance, it's really important that I don't predetermine, that I keep an open mind and don't predetermine the sort of result. But there are other people, I am sure, who will be doing that campaign and that engagement and taking that sort of more hearts and minds sort of role. I think part of the reason that I wanted Stephen to come and sort of talk this evening was so that we had that background, that sort of knowledge of what it actually meant, because we need to both sort of those that want to convince people, want to win hearts and minds, want to persuade people, want to inspire people. That's totally, that's really exciting. As Amy was saying, it's a really exciting possibility. But at the same time, we need to keep our feet on the floor and know that this is a legal process, and we have to sort of do it properly, and and it does come down to things like parks and cemeteries and stuff like that. Obviously, other parish councils around the borough do extra things. I know Cookham Parish Council did amazing work during the pandemic with supporting people, and there's a brilliant sort of community there. I know there are parish councils who fund extra opening hours at libraries, that do all sorts of things, and do things like hanging baskets. But obviously they have to cover their core functions. They have to set their precept accordingly. They have to cover their core functions before they can do those nice things. They don't just, they have to, those.
But the core function could be cemeteries and allotments. Is that right? The core functions could be as little as cemeteries and allotments, and then all the nice things could be tagged on top, and a decision for taxpayers to fund those. For example, they might want to fund hanging baskets, they might want to fund Christmas lights, they might not want to fund parks or anything else, and leave that with the borough. Is that correct?
I don't think they could not run. I don't think that a parish council could do nothing but hanging baskets and nice things. I think they do have to take on some level of actual function. Stephen probably knows. I believe it's allotments is the sort of default thing, but that's just a legal loophole.
Stephen, can you answer that?
I can answer that. In actual fact, I'm going to probably reword it in a different way. With regards to allotments, parish and town councils have the primary legislation. It's just that obviously in Windsor there isn't a town council, so therefore it's the district council, i.e. the borough council, that does that, because it's a tier 2. With regards to the services that are provided, the question you probably need to answer yourself, and it is a dose of reality, is why wouldn't a town council be providing it? Why wouldn't the council that is delivering the services locally, raising the funds locally, deliver the services locally? So that's probably your question that you need to realistically ask, and you need to ask yourself. It's not about the nice things. The nice things obviously come afterwards, but you really do need to actually, or everyone, doesn't matter what side of the argument you are on, is why wouldn't a town council be delivering town council services for its local residents? At the moment, you have a borough council that is delivering it. It raises money from Windsor, obviously, for a certain amount of those services. But that's the question you need to ask. This is why it will take a long time to get that. The answer to that question will take a considerable amount of time, and it also will require the borough to actually expend some resources in doing this, because it may need to change some of its internal practices, purely simply because of contractual obligations and how finances are worked out. So this is not a simple thing, and it's not a matter about having, if your idea is to have a town council for the nice things, my strong advice is don't do it. Absolutely do not do it. If you want a town council to deliver services, then yes, definitely do it. So don't look at a parish or town council as doing the nice stuff. They have certain responsibilities, powers, and they need to deliver services in the area.
Okay, thank you. All right, we've got time for one more quick question from Mr. Lowe, and then we'll move on to Paul Roach.
Yes, hi Karen, just picking up on one point, reference that you made where you talked about building awareness and it said educating the local residents. You need to use all of the channels available. So both, the ability of the council to talk to residents because you send out council tax information, as well as social media, but you can't rely on social media because in Windsor, less than 60% of people are on Facebook. So you need to use all of the different channels. So it's a process of education over a period of some time.
Yeah. Thank you, Steve. That's a really good point. And obviously, I didn't want, and I never mentioned council tax bills. That was just one thing. I know that's a really official, boring council thing, and I don't know how many people would read all the leaflets. It would, with the idea to put a separate leaflet in. I don't know who would read the leaflets, but I guess it's about trying to use, as Steve said, trying to use all the methods and not just these meetings. For the people that are already interested, not just Facebook, for those who are already interested on local neighbourhood Facebook groups. Yeah, no, that's a really good point. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so thank you, Stephen, for your time and your presentation. Really appreciate it. It's very useful. We've all learned a lot this evening. I'm sure it'll be a topic that's on future agendas here as well. And Councillor Davies, we look forward to hearing progress as it's made. So now I'm going to hand over to our town manager, Paul Roach, for his presentation. Thank you for your patience.
That's fine. Thank you, Chair. I'm hoping, Lawrence, you're able to pull up the presentation. There is one correction that I'm not sure if Lawrence has got the corrected presentation, but if he hasn't, I'll correct it as I go through. But if you let me know when you can see the presentation, I will begin.
So are you sharing or am I sharing?
If you could share, Lawrence, that'd be great.
Just give me a sec. Hang on.
That's the next page for me, Lawrence. Thank you. Yep, perfect. Thank you. So as most of you will be aware, I always sort of present sort of the sort of footfall flow over the past sort of 12 months. You will see, unfortunately, the two lines that I tried to compare, the 2019 and 2022, unfortunately, they're very similar colours, so apologies for that. But this is how the report sent to me. I can't actually change the colours on this, but you will see the sort of the darker of the two blue colours is the 2022 results over the last 12 months. And for the most part, we have operated slightly above the 2009 figures, which is obviously pre-COVID. So these are average figures. So they're not actual figures in terms of the actual sort of movements of people through Pescud Street, but they're a general average. So they give us a general trend as how the town centre is been doing. And you can see there towards the sort of August, we sort of peak usually, as most towns you would expect, peak sort of July, August time. And then we naturally see a slight drop off as school holidays, summer holidays finish and schools go back. So September, although certainly September for us this year, footfall was a little bit higher than 2019. If you go into the next slide, please, Lawrence. Those are the headline sort of data in October. So again, the last 52 weeks, we saw a little over sort of 7.3 million, which is just about 3.5% increase on the previous year. With the footfall figures to year to date, so that's from January to this point, is 6.1, and again, sort of a similar sort of 3.9% increase from the previous year. I won't go through the other two figures. They're just, you know, interesting figures that always come out of our headline data, which just gives us, you know, which was the busiest week, the busiest day, and obviously the busiest peak hour. And generally, it's either a Sunday or a Saturday. Generally, tend to come out in that peak hour time for most weeks during the year. Next slide, please. So this is a slide that there has to be a slight correction. Apologies. So car parking September, it did decrease. However, it didn't decrease by 40%. We've had some difficulty getting all the data. We lost 1 month between the last time the forum met and this month. And when I did the data, it sort of initially came out with 40, and I sort of sent it off. But on further inspection, it looks like we missed out a couple of months. So sorry, weeks. So the actual decrease was only 18%, with the total number of users being around 77,283 users. So we do always expect a decrease in September anyway. It just wasn't as bad as I've sent out the report. So I will send an update on that. I have sent an update for Lawrence to share after this meeting. So whilst it's been down, it's not as bad as I initially thought. Whilst car parking is down, our coach parking has gone up, and actually across most of September we've seen most of the coach parking user figures well above sort of 1,000 users per month over the summer period. So September was particularly strong because I think we saw a little bit of summer did come back in September. We actually did see some sun towards there, and we saw sort of that peak at sort of 1,311 users. So which was good, and actually reflects a lot of the information that we're getting back from a lot of our attractions, that some of the, you know, our USA visitors and some of our sort of worldwide visitors have started to come back, which we sort of predicted, I think, shortly after we came out of lockdown, sort of 2 years ago, that sort of this year and next year we would see significant rises, whereas the sort of world economy, visitor economy, would start to sort of kick back into gear. So clearly that's happened. Next slide. So in terms of vacancy rates, we have the national average has gone slightly up to 13.9%. It was 13.8 when I last reported this. Windsor has pretty much stayed static, 9.4%. And we haven't really seen, since the last meeting, too much movement in units. I did report a number of units had come online. We've only recently lost 2 units, Neal's Yard and FG Pims and Sons. Unfortunately, I don't know the detail behind us losing Neal's Yards, because as a company, they are still operating fairly big towns and cities. So I'm not sure if it was just a Windsor branch thing, or there is some consolidation that they have, or indeed it may be that their lease was up and they thought we're going to go. But there doesn't seem to have been, we haven't received any information on why they suddenly closed, and they literally did close overnight. In terms of stores opening, we've recently had Card Factory open, French Kiss open as well in Pescud Street, and there are a number of units that are either under offer or under development. So I reported at the last meeting about Mango, Valerie Patisserie. We know that's about to come online. Cath Kitson, I've been in touch with the agent, and they have an offer on. And obviously the Coffee Gallery, which has actually opened in or is about to open in Pesca Street, the former Corals unit, which actually has been empty for some time. So it's good to see that that's going to be brought forward and come back into to action. Move on to the next slide. Thank you. And the next slide. Sorry, that's Christmas. That's the title slide. Christmas. Christmas is upon us. For those that don't know, most of you will know we launched the Christmas campaign on the 1st of November. My Festive Royal Borough is our hashtag. We used it last year to much effect, so we're encouraging all of our partners, if they're doing anything that's been featured in our programme or supporting any of the work that our colleagues in RBWM are to use that hashtag, and so we can have a central base for people to reflect or add or support some of our work. So this is one of 4 or 5 social media socials that can be used across many of the platforms, Instagram, Facebook. Those that have received an email from me probably have seen a very big, large version of this at the end of each one of my emails. And apologies, I cannot format it properly and it's enormous, but hopefully it gets the message across. We will have, like last year, we will have, there is an electronic copy of this, and it's a huge program this year. So I hope most of the members have received it. We do have hard copies that were printed and are being distributed, have been started to be distributed last week, and this week there should be copies at the Visitor Information Centre. Most have gone to all of the libraries and all of the public buildings. And so there'll be a second wave of stuff going out across the borough, but ultimately we're trying to encourage people to use the online copy to see what activities are happening across the borough. The actual brochure itself is very different design. It's a new design this year, designed by one of our business partners in Windsor, actually, the Ice Gallery. This has come through the work of the visitor marketing team. Julia White and the team have put this together. I have to say, Julia has spent a lot of time putting this together. And so it really does reflect a lot of what's happening, not just in Windsor, but across the whole, and Eton or West Windsor, but across the whole of the borough. So there's a lot of activities in there. And I have to say, we tried very hard to include everything. But I know that there were some events that were missed, but we you know, it's I think this is maybe the second or third time we've done this type of brochure, and each time we get a bit more in and we fit a bit more in. If you could go on to the next slide, Lawrence, thank you. So these are just images of some of the activities that are outside Windsor, because one of the requests that I was asked about, is there activities that we're promoting? You'll see on the left hand side there, we've got Cookham Christmas Market, we've got the Clure and Dedworth Christmas Fair, we've got another Cookham detail, we've got information on Maidenhead Christmas Light Switch On and Sunning Hill in Ascot and their big street fair, which they haven't held for some years. So, and then the usual sort of, we've got Eton and Windsor obviously coming up next week. So it's a lot of information. We've got information on shopping, events, outdoor activities, some of the big attractions. So it's quite comprehensive and it's quite a lot of information. But I would urge you all to have a look, and if you can share it and share the link, go to the Visit Windsor website, and you'll be able to download a sort of turn page copy as well. Next slide, please. This is some of the big attractions. We will have Lapland UK is on there, but I think they've sold out now. So, but Windsor Great Park Illuminated, if you haven't been, strongly recommend you go. It's a great event in the Great Park. Obviously, Windsor on Ice will be taking place. They're currently building that. That's due to open on the 17th of November. And then we've got grotto experiences and loads of mini events around the borough. And it has to be said, I think more people are embracing things like Santa's Grottos, things like Pantos. So we've tried to cover all of the major sort of art events, panto events that are taking place across the whole of the borough and not just focus on Windsor per se. But it's quite refreshing to see such a full programme of activity. Next slide, please. Oh, I'm not sure what's happened there. We seem to have formatted, has gone out of sync there. Thank you, Lawrence. Shopping events. So again, a lot of our partners, opportunities for people to shop where the late night shopping is. I'm sorry, folks, we missed. Daniel's had their late night shopping last night, and I heard it was very good. But there are other opportunities in the coming weeks to take part in any shopping activities. And if you haven't decided where you're going to get your Christmas tree, a nice advert for the Crown Estate for you. Next slide. Right, so just as I've said before, brochure was launched on the 1st last week. Online and socials have been created and printed copies are available. So if anybody wants any copies, please let me know. We have a stockpile at the town hall at the moment, and we're getting those out in the next sort of few days and over the weekend. A lot of the brochures will go out during some of our key switch on events next week. But we've tried to make sure that all of the public areas have got them. So if there's any areas you think any members of the public feel that never seem to get a copy, we've only printed 5,000 copies. So we because we long gone are the days where we would print off sort of 60,000-70,000 copies. Because clearly if we don't get them out to people, that's a lot of paper that's wasted. So we're trying to embrace the whole sustainability and making sure that those programs go out to people that will actually use them. So there are small distribution going out to those public buildings, but if people feel that they need copies, just let us know and we'll try and make sure we reserve those for you. And is there another slide? No, there isn't. Okay. So I've got one other bit of information that I was asked to provide. I didn't include it in my report because actually when my report was submitted, I was asked a question about an update on Windsor Yards. So
for a resident, Walker, who was unable to make the meeting, but she asked if, we could provide.
I'm happy to give an answer now. I've got that as an added slide, but I'm happy to give that now, Chair, if you want.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Yeah. So as most of you know, planning approval for the Windsor Yard development went past panel back in April this year. As again, you will know, most of you will know, it's very complex development. It's a mixed-use site, apart hotel, retail, leisure space, cinema, car park improvements. So there's a lot of detail there. And actually what there is, and most people don't know, there are multiple landowners that are either linked to, close by, underneath, at the side. And so the planning team and the legal team are going through a fairly lengthy process in trying to make sure that the legal documents and the conditions that are going to have to be set on the development as it progresses are correct. So I know it's been quite a while since April, but that's not uncommon for a development of this size and for the amount of detail that they need in order to make sure that when it comes online and they start to work, they've covered all their bases. So unfortunately, I don't have a date currently for those works to be completed. The planning and legal team are working as quickly as they can to get through that, but there is a sort of it's a balanced process. So they will submit something, it then has to get approved by the developers, and then they will approve stuff, and we have to approve it. So there's a bit of to and froing at the moment, but they're trying to work through as quickly as they can. But it is quite a sensitive part of the town with some sensitive issues around some of the landowners and parts of the development. And of course, underneath we have a very big service road that needs to be maintained and kept open, because whilst the majority of people that use the service road are linked to Windsor Yards, there is actually quite a number of properties that aren't linked to Windsor Yards that also use the service road. So most of you know, Marks and Spencer's, there's a lot of properties on Pescud Street, on the lower part of Pescud Street, that are all linked to that service road. So it's things like that they need to make sure that there isn't anything that's going to happen as they raise the building from the Phoenix end up towards where the old Next building is, that they're not affected, or that there are things in place to manage that. So as soon as if I have any more information, happy to feed that back. Yeah, that's where we are with regards to Windsor Yards.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for your update. Do we have any questions from any of the residents? Gentleman at the back, if you'd like to come and introduce yourself, thank you.
Hi, I'm Donald Elland, I'm a resident in town. I just want to ask two things. Number one is, you mentioned about car and coach. Is there any reason why you don't publish information on train and inbound visitors on the trains, given we have 2 stations?
Thank you. Yeah, it's quite interesting. We actually do ask the train stations to provide us data, and they can only provide us annual data at the moment. We have asked them for a sort of regular updates, but the way that that's just because of the way that they collect their data, it's very hard for them to give us sort of monthly usage. We only currently get an annual report from them at the end of the year, but it is something we've asked them for on a more regular basis. But at the moment, I don't receive it. Then I will ask my colleagues in transport if they do, but as yet, no one's been able to provide me that.
The second question is slightly different. It's in relation to, I'm not sure if it's something you cover, but it's in terms of street lighting. In that, is there any intention to improve the street lighting on Thames Street and High Street? Because there seems to be a lot of it missing, particularly around the above the Ivy and that building and the old Barclays building as well.
Yes. So yes, that's a good question. There are two sets of lights that are on the Ivy and Barclays Bank that certainly has been reported, and I'm not sure where they are with replacing it, because there's a general upgrade of lighting that's taking place across the borough and indeed Windsor. But I know that there are certain lanterns that, because they're lanterns, they can't just simply take out the sodium light and put a new LED light. The whole lantern needs to be replaced. But so I will need to get an update and come back to you on that. But it is something I know that has been raised, because I know that there are two on the Ivy. I think there's one possibly on the Guildhall, and we've got a number of them out on by the church, which I know was recently looked at. So it's I can add that to my list to chase. It will be the street lighting team that picked that up, but they have been made aware.
Thank you. Question, Mr. Bowden, would you like to come forward?
Thank you, Chair. Paul, a question for yourself, and you know my previous experience. Coach park usage, how do you measure that? Is that via tickets bought?
The simple answer is yes. It's the number of tickets bought by the coach companies. Both, they can buy them in advance or as and when they use the service. So it's purely on ticket numbers. What we can't currently monitor are those that simply drop off and go away, and we do get quite a few of those, and they choose not to park because possibly that's their particular arrangements are that they're going off to do another job, or they're trying to avoid paying a fee to park in the coach park.
That's correct, isn't it, Paul? They do avoid the charge. There's no way of monitoring those vehicles except if you walk along Alma Road, we'll see empty coaches coming back out again, right? So there's a multiple of the pollution that the large diesel coaches are performing within a residential area. And they're also not conforming to the road regulations about not turning right into Arthur Road, coming in from Arthur Road or coming in from Clarence Road and turning left and causing mini jams in those junctions.
Yeah, I know it's been a constant problem for us. It's really difficult without having somebody sat on the junction sort of 24/7. It's really hard. There had been some considerable amount of work done to direct coach drivers and communicate with coach drivers to use the Alma Road plan or direction into and out of the coach park. However, we get some coaches that may be going in a different direction, or they come in one way and are going on to another venue, and they choose to take that sharp right that they shouldn't do to try and get back onto the M4 as quickly as they can, rather than travel down the whole length of Alma Road onto Goslar Way. It's a tricky one. I'd have to say the vast majority do it. We do get a few, as you say, that don't. But it's one of those things that, yeah, it's unless we have somebody there enforcing every day, we're not going to be able to change those individuals that do that.
How about a barrier or ANPR, apart from the foreign coaches that go in?
I suppose there's a potential for that. I suppose that's sort of beyond my pay grade to answer that. I think there is something. I know that the transport team are looking at potentially trialing ANPR for other things in terms of enforcement. So, not wanting to speak on their behalf, that I don't see why that couldn't be looked at. But I think that needs some work done on it before it can be simply just rolled out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Bryce, do you have a question?
Thank you. Two areas. The first is Christmas. I don't know if it was in the brochure, but are we offering free parking for any nights to encourage the Christmas shoppers? That's one area. I'll do the other. And it was on the visitor numbers. With the numbers, have you got any record of what people are spending? Because I'm picking up with businesses generally that people, when they go out, are spending much less than before, which is an indication of the cost of living. And then with the overseas, do we know the percentage of visitors that are now overseas? Because I would imagine they're spending Paris higher. And are visitors now tending to stay overnight, or really is the majority day visitors? Because I know there was a strategy to try to get more people to stay overnight, so I wondered whether that's happening yet or not. Thank you.
Okay, so in terms of Christmas car parking, there is no plans for any free car parking outside of what's on offer currently for borough residents, where they get I think it's the first hour for free. I'm not aware that we're the borough in a financial position to afford anything more than that. I could be corrected on that, but I'd have to check with parking colleagues, but I'm not aware that there is any additional free parking on top of what's already on offer. In terms of the numbers of visitors and overseas spending and overnight stay, I would have to refer you to my colleague Julia White from the visitor marketing team on that. I mean, in terms of spend, what I would say is certainly with retailers, and they are very sensitive about revealing the amount of money people are spending in the town, because they're obviously very commercial and see that as quite sensitive. Yeah, it's been a very mixed range depending on the sector that we're talking about. It's been quite mixed across the retail sector, be it coffee shops, be it retail fashion, be it jewelry, and they've tended this year not to report much to us in terms of their actual spend and how well they're doing. And you can infer on that a whole range of things, but if they were doing terrible, they would probably tell us that they're doing terrible. So I suspect it's sort of an even spread across the way. I don't think it's awful. I think our retailers are wanting to get more from the visitors when they come, but they're not getting as much as they're possibly their targets are saying that they should be getting. But I haven't had retailers knocking on the door saying it's awful, we're not hitting our targets, what can we do to increase it? But for some sectors that can be a very mixed bag. In terms of, as I say, in terms of visitors, overnights, overseas spending, Julia may be able to answer that, and I can certainly take that away and see if I can get an answer for that, and overnight stays at the hotels, and get an answer for you at the next meeting.
Thank you, Paul. Councillor Teasley has a question.
Thanks, Paul. I think in a previous meeting you mentioned a more sensitive footfall system in the town. Is that being used now? And is it giving us some extra useful data?
It is being used, and I'm not going to pretend that I understand every bit of data that I've looked at. But what I will do for the next meeting, I will present some very specifically on the new visitor insights, and it has been quite illuminating in terms of it allows us, we get more data basically. So whilst I'm reporting to you in the hundreds of thousands, this new system will be reporting in the millions, because effectively it picks up almost everybody that comes into the town centre in a much wider catchment. So it will cover things like people walking down by the river, people on the river, people by the bridge, people in green spaces, Alexandra Gardens, Bachelor's Acre. Whereas our footfall counts, the footfall count that I'm presenting to you is the footfall counter that we have on Pescud Street. We do have footfall counters in the shopping centres. They have multiples, both Windsor Yards and Windsor Royal Station. They have multiples, but this new system covers that area as well. And it will also cover the coach part. So whilst, you know, we may know how many coaches are coming in, coaches come in different sizes. So whereas this system will be able to hopefully tell us the individuals coming off those coaches within reason. If it's a school coach and they don't have phones, then that's slightly difficult, or if they don't have a GPS enabled device, then that's slightly different. But we are seeing a lot more credible data from this new system, because it does catch everything. So I will make a point of presenting that, but it does. I can't just throw those figures out. I need to sort of understand that before I can explain it properly to yourselves and the wider forum.
Excellent, that sounds exciting. So do we have any more questions from Paul? Yes, Retiring.
Hi there, Paul. How are you? No doubt you'll be very busy now, getting ready for all the exciting things. The program looked beautiful. I assume that wasn't the whole one, just a sample. I'm not certain. Is there room for charities to put in events and activities for locals and families, or is it purely for commercial? Is there a fee? And you know, how does that work? And if it's open for charities as well, how does one advertise activities for families and events?
Thank you, Lau. The program isn't just for commercial activities. There's a lot of non-profit community events in the program. I mean, most of the switch-on events aren't commercial events. They're organised by local community associations. The Eton Town Council, I know Dedworth is organised locally. So yes, we normally request information for the program in July. So we do try to get ahead of putting this program together, because as it's got bigger, we've needed to request information a lot sooner. Most of the hotels, just to give you some indication, most of the hotels already sort of confirm their Christmas activity in April, May time every year. So and we're trying to align ourselves to trying to receive that information as early as that, so that we hopefully we don't miss anybody, and two, we have a better program to deliver. So yeah, there isn't any restrictions on who gets in there. If you've got an event and you want to promote it, get the information to us. As I said, we're only restricted by the number of pages that we've got. So and at the moment I think we're at a limit to the number of pages that we currently, I think it's 24 pages. So there's quite a few pages that we cover, but we try to fit in everybody. But sometimes we do have the odd one that drops out. But if you've got your Christmas program and you want to include it, there's no reason why you can't send that to us as early as you know it. But we constantly push people to try and make sure they give us the data as early in the year as possible.
Thank you. I just wondered, because I was just checking back if we had missed something, because I don't think we've received any emails since in May, really, from you. Is that directly to you, or is there a separate, would maybe you be able to share, or maybe we'll be able to get information where we can actually reach out and email, where we can publish events or like raise awareness of events?
Yeah, so the main place I would say is the Visit Windsor website. So you're able to go on there, you're able to put your own events on. I think there is there's sort of a publishing protocol that it goes through, but effectively you can do that now if you wanted to. So and we've also got My Rural Borough, which is specifically sort of been designed, that came out of COVID, and that's designed to support businesses and give them an opportunity through all the social media outlets to be able to promote particular and specific events. So Visit Windsor, My Rural Borough, they are there now. You can use them, you can populate and send content and share content with colleagues on that.
Thank you very much. Okay, so coming to the end of the meeting, I don't think we've got any more questions for Paul. Thank you very much, Paul, for your time. So now the last piece of the agenda is general resident questions and suggestions for the next forum. So Sue, do you have a question?
Yes, it's Sue Pendley again. I just wondered if the councillors, please, could tell us if they've got any idea on the projected final cost of the road resurfacing that's going on outside Henry VIII Gate, Windsor Castle, please.
I don't. We don't have to top of our head. We can certainly find out. Yeah, we can find out for you. Yeah, we'll find out for you, and we'll publish it when we send out the minutes for the next meeting.
Thank you, because I wondered if the council really think that it's been a worthwhile and justified expenditure in these current times of cutback.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it was an historic decision, but I had a feeling that lots of it was paid for by local enterprise money, wasn't it? The LEP money. Actually, perhaps former Councillor Bowden might be the one to step forward here, because it was under his watch.
As far as I'm aware, the local enterprise board, which is funded by central government, had provided £1 million to the cost, and then I think after that 300,000 was absorbed from the community investment levy stroke section 106, which is monies that contributed by developers, right, and spread across the borough or the parishes. If it occurs in the future, similar to a roundabout development in Bray, which is costing 1.3 million, $1 million from the LEP and 300,000 from the SIL.
And what was the sort of reasoning, what was the justification in spending this money? What was the justification in putting these little bricks down the full length of the road? Was there a particular reason that whoever made the decision decided that this was going to be a good idea?
Yes, the final need for the security of the castle, together with the gates that were put in place for the guard change in Park Road, Sheep Street and Thames and Victoria Street, there was still a need for personal security outside the castle, where people were congregating either to go in the castle or just view the castle. And if you remember, there were concrete blocks and ironwork, etc. So that to prevent, you remember going back to 2018 or before, throughout many European cities, there were drive-in killers, right, and terrorists, right, in going and driving through. I remember Nice, there was one in Rome, and also one in Germany, probably in Paris as well. So we had to, it was a national decision, that we had to secure the castle in that particular manner. And also it is in conservation area, and also it is the highest class 1 and above conservation area and national heritage.
I can understand the barriers, I think you're absolutely right, very nice. But I just wonder about the actual expenditure of the way that the road has been laid, as opposed to finding probably a less expensive solution. It's been going on for months and months and months, with total disruption to many people. And I just felt that it seems to have been an awful over expenditure of something that could have been enhanced in certain respects in a less expensive way.
I was told by one of the infrastructure, and I'm not going to quote him now, I don't know what their directorate titles are, change, that the subsurface, right, needed special attention, drains, the waterworks, the cables and electricity were all underneath, virtually at a Victorian level, and to make that secure area together with the approach, and parcel itself was requesting that it is made of a certain material, and so that was the final choice, not necessarily on price, but also a decision by many senior people above the Royal Borough itself.
For example, it was most peculiar that the road was laid, bricks went in, and then all of a sudden, 3 or 4 square feet have been lifted up because they're now putting the barrier in. Could the barrier not go in first, and then you lay the bricks around it? That's an additional cost. I've heard mentioned 5 million now. And if it is, where is that money, the extra money? If there's an extra expenditure, where is the extra money coming from? Over your 1.3.
We'll get the total cost for you, but I mean, it won't be funded. Nothing's in our budget, is it? Yeah, so it would have to come out of the fill money from development. So we'll find out for you anyway, and we'll get an answer for you. Thank you. Thanks.
Well, that's a satisfactory explanation.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
No, it's your explanation.
Does anyone have any other questions or any other suggestions for it? Yes, Mr.
Question for information really. There's an area in Windsor which has been labelled for a long time, the business school Windsor. It's a massive development sector. It's part of our town. It's a huge area of our town which has been underutilised for many, many years, 7 or 8 years. It's been through a process, I know, I don't know all the history of it, but we see nothing ever seems to happen. It seems to be got to a situation now, as far as I can read it on the website and so on. There's more planning things going on about supporting the housing project, which is now finally, emerged as good. Can you enlighten us, councillors, please? Is it a planning issue that is taking so long, or is it a developer which is holding this town for ransom and not allowing it to thrive with such an important site in our community?
Can I just clarify that you're talking about the site off Alma Road?
Yeah.
Yes.
A business water.
Yes. So my understanding is that there's one planning application which is currently sort of valid. There's another one that's being prepared, but it has not yet even reached pre-planning. So I would say the answer is probably that it's with developers rather than with planning, as far as I'm aware.
This developer out, making a claim that there are this country is short of houses. There's a housing project there due to accommodation involved. Well, can this council do something by putting some pressure on people to get things moving on what is a very valuable, important part of
So there was recently a public session at the Old Court where the developers had their current or their new plans that they're planning to submit for a very large development, including sort of over 65s housing. And I'm under the understanding that the original planning permission was actually granted on appeal because it wasn't popular locally, and then it went to and was inspected and it went through on appeal. But I think that that's actually fallen away because it was before COVID. It was some time ago now, so it would have expired. But it's rumbling on and on. But obviously, developers will develop when they've got the money and the will to do so. And it looks like it's in the offing, but it hasn't come through to planning yet.
Mr. Haggard, would you like to come forward?
Ian Haggard, local resident. If I may advise you, if I look at the current plan that was approved on appeal, so that has now gone through, as far as I can tell, for planning commission to say that they have started. So they've dug a drain and a bit of trench, and they've been given approval. The new development, so there's 220 odd houses, flats that have never been built, that they had permission for the last 5 years. So appalling. But they've never moved forward. And new developers have come forward with alternative plans, which I think there's been information given at the Old Court for that we'll go through at some point for planning approval, with an extra floor on top of the current plans. So the nice green space that we can see as you look around there will be even higher with concrete and brick. So we currently are, to the best of my knowledge, with the planning down the roadside.
Obviously, as and when plans come through, they'll be on the planning portal, and residents can comment and put their own comments for or against any applications that come through. And then with a development of that size, it will obviously come to the Windsor planning development panel. And again, parish councils and relevant bodies can comment, and residents can comment and make representations at that meeting. So do get involved if that's something that you really are interested in.
And they were looking at the drains the other day when I walked by, and I asked what they were doing, and they said that their drains were all blocked up with tree trunks. So I think I told Councillor Wilson about that. Mr. Bowden, do you have a comment or question?
I just explain upon that for the last 8 years and before that. Site was purchased.
Would you like to put your microphone on so we can hear you? Thank you.
Sorry. We go back to 2015. Previously, the Imperial House had been demolished. That gave way to a vacant site, and it was purchased by the freeholder, which was, without mentioning any names, but I will, National Farmers Union, right? In 2015, they put in planning permission for 3 blocks of flats and an office block, going up to the region of about 700, 900 foot, which gave them a gap of 600 foot between the aircraft that were landing above them at 4:30 in the morning, which is quite sensible. It was turned down by the borough planning department, turned down by the planning panel as it was then. It went to appeal. I actually stood as a resident there objecting to it at the appeal, where it took place at the Windsor Racecourse. After approximately 2 years, it was granted. From that stage, then you're looking at 2017 as being given. Then they had 3 years in which to develop it. There was a supplementary application go in for maintenance work, which they did, which then extends the planning permission again for another 3 years. And then mysteriously, well, not to my knowledge, that site was sold, right, to another developer, and then we come along to the meeting in the old court where they now wish to put several blocks in there of residential accommodation, which is under the auspices of restrictions in whether or not there's any SIL money being paid on that, because it's age-related property. So that's another thing. The site of the car park seems to have been purchased somewhere or other, and there was an application for 4 houses there with the entrance through the NFU site. I objected to that together with the residents nearby, but that was passed. And now we have the mysterious barriers appeared between Vansittart Road and Alma Road, which have been knocked down. Don't know whether it's antisocial behaviour or lack of proper thing. We don't know who has bought that land, but there must be a sneaky suspicion that it is probably going to be used as an access road, because the other site doesn't want to have an access through to those 4 mysterious houses that are going to be built on the car park sometime in the future. And that is nearing extinction on that planning order until something's gone ahead, unless it's this mysterious work that's going on for access into Alma Road itself. Meanwhile, the lamp that was hit by some motorist that was going to go down there because his sat-nav told him, was destroyed, wrapped with the customary silver, don't touch it, it's dangerous, since last March, and nothing's been done about it, despite repeated requests. Any more information? Please contact me.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, so does anyone have any other comments, questions, or if not, we'll close the meeting. Oh, do you have something quickly?
There's a consultation that I want to alert residents to, and it's to do with buses, and you can find the consultation on RBWM, just feed in supported bus services. And it hasn't had any publicity. It's really important that residents are aware of it. So one of the consequences that the proposal is that they're in Dedworth, on the north east of Dedworth and on the southwest of Dedworth, there will not be a bus service for residents. There will be a big cohort of residents in a bus service, and it'll mean the only doctor's surgery that there is, which is in Dale Road in Windsor, will not have a bus service. So it's really important that you tell as many residents you know who use buses, please look at this survey, please look carefully at what is proposed and put your thoughts in and see whether you're going to be actually disadvantaged if this comes to pass. So it's important, and it hasn't had any publicity. I hope that's going to start next week. So let's spread the word. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so thank you all for your time this evening. Oh, sorry. Councillor Costa, do you have a quick comment? Because we want to close.
Thank you very much, Chair. Appreciate all the interventions so far this evening. Really, the question was about the RBWM's response to the Heathrow noise consultation. It's a very important issue for Windsor, so I'll keep it short and just say great. It's great to see the response, but it will be great to have the officer really talking about the thinking behind it and to see how we can push forward to make sure that residents are protected from the many academic health and well-being issues that are actually associated with the noise from aircraft. So if we could, I really would like to see an officer presenting and being open to being asked questions, please.
Okay, we'll request that for a future meeting. For everyone else here and listening at home, our response to the consultation is as part of the pack that was sent out as part of this meeting. So if you wanted to review it, then you can see it there. But yes, we can request that for a future meeting. Councillor Costa.
Thank you.
So with that, I'll thank everyone and wish you a good evening. Thank you. say when the next meeting is. The next meeting's on the 11th of January, by the way, so hope to see you all then.